This is our list of the top 10 strongest characters with multiple quirks in My Hero Academia. Number 10. Kurogiri. The Warp Gate villain Kurogiri is a high-end Nomu with the impressively capable teleportation quirk, Warp Gate. This quirk was previously integral to the League of Villains operations and has even managed to turn the tide of an entire war on more than one occasion. He's not often thought of as a character with multiple quirks since he doesn't seem to use more than one, but there's a reason for that. Warp Gate is actually an artificial quirk that uses the quirk Cloud as its base. This comes from the fact that Kurogiri was created using the body of Shirakumo, the original wielder of Cloud. Despite being a Nomu, Kurogiri has never actually been much of a combatant at all, so unfortunately, he's got nothing on our later entries. Number 9. Spinner. Shuichi Iguchi, or Spinner, was once the weakest member of the League of Villains, but is now an absolute beast. His original quirk, Gecko, is the reason he looks like a reptile and allows him to stick to walls and other smooth surfaces. But in preparation for the final war, All For One gave him 2 additional quirks, Body Bulk and Scale Mail. Body Bulk lets him grow in size and strength, and Scale Mail lets him create an exoskeleton of sharp scales he can use to defend himself. This collection of abilities made him a very intimidating person to face. However, Spinner's new quirks came with some complications. Scale Mail makes him bleed, and Body Bulk has started to mentally destabilize him. Spinner may be really powerful, but he can't handle the burden of multiple quirks like the other characters on our list can. Number 8. Lady Nagan. Lady Nagan, or Kaina Sasumi, is a former pro hero who was branded a villain after murdering a leader of the Public Safety Commission, which she previously served as a legendary killer thanks to her quirk, Rifle. With it, Lady Nagan is literally a human weapon, as she can protrude or retract a rifle-like appendage from her right elbow. She even has a part of her arm that extends and curls up to form a scope, but she can also change the power output of her rifle for increased velocity, but runs the increased risk of jamming. Lady Nagan can remove bits of her own hair, which can be molded into various sorts of bullets. 2 we've seen have been hollow points and curving bullets. With this quirk, Lady Nagan has a range of 3 kilometers, or nearly 2 miles. After escaping from Tartarus, Lady Nagan became a multi-quirk user thanks to All For One. Airwalk allows her to levitate by standing on the air around her. It's a very simple quirk, but is absolutely perfect for a marksman like Lady Nagan. She even used the recoil of her arm as a propellant for faster movement. Her remote detonation quirk was a fail-safe placed by All For One in case she decided to betray him, which she did. Lady Nagan was able to give Deku a run for his money at a point where he was already unreasonably strong. But unfortunately, she's nowhere near strong enough to handle the characters coming up. Number 7. Hood. The high-end Nomu Hood was specifically designed to be able to handle having multiple quirks. He had the perfect balance of enhancements and quirks to be able to take down virtually any hero in a solo fight. If either Hawks or Endeavor had to fight this thing alone, it would be their last. In total, Hood had a whopping 6 quirks and was designed by Dr. Garaki to take full advantage of them. Muscle augmentation allowed him to boost his muscle size, strength, and durability. Power granted him insane levels of physical strength, enough to tear through skyscrapers with ease. Fun fact, the quirk Power is what public records understand to be Deku's quirk instead of One For All. Super Regeneration is an extremely rare quirk that Hood used to recover from what would otherwise have been fatal blows. Transforming arms allowed him to alter the shape of his arms for long-range and overwhelming attacks. Shoulder-mounted jets gave him 4 retracting jet boosters on his back that allowed him to fly at decent speeds. Although the wings he made with transforming arms definitely helped. Hood had one more mystery quirk that allowed him to store others inside himself and release at least 9 at will. Despite these incredible quirks, what Hood lacks in comparison to the rest of our list is intelligence. While it's clear from his ability to speak that Hood had a greater mental capacity than most Nomu, he's still just that, a Nomu. He had the mind and instincts of a battle junkie, but totally lacked tactical thinking, unlike the rest of this list. Number 6. 9. 9 is the primary antagonist of the My Hero Academia Heroes Rising movie. His original quirk was weather manipulation, which allowed him to do exactly that. He could create massive storm clouds, colossal tornadoes, summon bolts of lightning, manipulate wind, and even fly. His power was so ridiculous that he was shunned by society because they considered it to be godlike. However, the major downside of this otherwise unfair ability is that it caused rapid cellular degeneration and unbearable pain, so he had to use it very selectively. Besides this, 9 possessed an inferior clone of the All For One quirk that allowed him to steal and possess up to 8 different quirks besides his original. Air Wall let 9 create a transparent barrier of pressurized air that could act as a directional shield capable of withstanding one for all at 100%. He could also release bursts of air that would repel enemies and attacks. Scanning allowed 9 to identify and somewhat understand the various quirks of others along with their general power levels through an infrared-like vision. Bullet Laser let him shoot off purple lasers from his fingertips, which could tear through various solids with ease and in certain cases explode on contact. Hydra was an interesting one. He used to summon and control several large dragon-shaped attacks from his back. His final quirk, Cell Activation, was too flawed to be useful. It allowed him to activate the cells in his or another person's body, boosting regeneration and repairing damage. But it only worked on people with type A blood, so 9, who had type B blood, was incompatible. Number 5. Number 6. Number 6 was a major antagonist in the My Hero Academia Vigilante spin-off series and had a total of 5 quirks. But that's not all, because like one of the top characters on our list, number 6 received body modifications to improve his physical and mental capabilities that aren't technically quirks, but might as well be. These modifications granted him enhanced senses, enhanced strength, enhanced durability, pain suppression, muscle enhancement, a nearly toga-level disguise ability that allows him to pretty much turn into sludge, clawed limbs, maximum quirk usage, and body storage. That last one allowed him to hold parts of a gun in his stomach and assemble them inside himself to weaponize his body with a firing mechanism to shoot bullets. Yeah, he's seriously overpowered, and we haven't even gotten to any of his quirks yet. Number 6's main quirk is Overclock. It's an extreme speed quirk that allowed him to move so fast that it was as if nothing else was moving, which tended to be about 3 to 10 times faster than usual. But in dire situations where adrenaline is pumping, this could easily scale up to several dozen times faster. According to the original wielder of the quirk, the high-speed hero O'Clock, arguably, the most impressive aspect of this quirk was the fact that it stimulates the brain enough to speed up the user's perception and thoughts relative to all other things. With it, number 6 could move faster than a speeding bullet, and it was as if the whole world was frozen. He could see, hear, and think at unimaginable speeds. It provided him with parallel processing. He could completely understand a recording that had been sped up to be 300 times faster. Early on, he could deliver a total of 8 blows onto someone with virtually simultaneous timing, and can do even more than that later on at the expense of hurting himself a bit. He could speed up his own cell growth to the point of being able to regrow arms. And as if all that wasn't enough, he accelerated the contents of his own body to the point of transforming into utterly combustible plasma energy. Despite all these incredible features, Overclock has a major weakness. It can only be used for a few seconds before it deprives the brain of too much oxygen. Intense focus makes the drain of oxygen accelerate, and if deprived of enough, the quirk doesn't activate. Also, it's pretty much useless in midair. His next quirk is Self-Detonation. It allowed him to treat parts of his body like explosives and blow them up. However, thanks to his next quirk, Regeneration, he was able to heal from such things with ease. The combination of this and his Overclock quirk was ridiculous. Radio waves allowed number 6 to generate electromagnetic pulses that could shut down power and communications in an area. And when he combined this with his parallel processing ability, he was able to take control of a hive mind. His last quirk, Bombify, allowed him to grow bombs all over his body, which he combined with Self-Detonation to deadly effect. Number 4. Gigantomachia. Gigantomachia is a force of nature that decimated entire cities just by being in transit. Gigantomachia is an extremely rare case because not only does he have a total of 7 quirks, but his body was never actually modified to do so. His original quirk was Endurance. It allowed him to convert his own morale into physical energy and stamina. Pain Blocker made him incapable of detecting any pain inside or outside of his body. Gigantification allows him to grow in proportion to his agitation or excitement levels, growing to be at least 25 meters or 82 feet tall. His quirk Dog gave him access to heightened senses of hearing and smell. Energy Saver lets his body function off of extremely small amounts of hydration and or nutrition and minimal amounts of sleep. Fierce Gains allows him to harden his muscles to an exponential degree. And finally, Mole allows Gigantomachia to grow mole-like claws from his fingers and spikes from his back, in addition to a shielding visor. Gigantomachia may be one of the least intelligent non-Nomu characters in the series, but with such a brilliantly synergized arsenal of quirks, few, if any, could ever handle him in a fight. In fact, nobody has ever even attempted to take this guy on solo. And the next 3 on our list are the only living characters who reasonably could. Number 3. All for One. The symbol of evil, All for One, has been a force to be reckoned with since the very dawn of Quirk society, making him the oldest living character in the series. The name of his original quirk, All for One, is the same as his villainous one. With it, he's able to steal countless others and even redistribute them to various people. In one way or another, he is responsible for the placement of every single character on this list. With this power, All for One was able to amass thousands of followers and effectively control the country of Japan from the shadows while also spreading his influence overseas. As a generational menace, it took the symbol of peace All Might to end the Demon Lord's reign. And even then, the hero received what would ultimately be a career-ending injury. Meanwhile, All for One had his minions hunting down quirks that would aid in his recovery. Which is exactly why Dr. Garaki began developing the hyper-regeneration quirk that All for One and many of the Nomu possess. However, because so many of his wounds had been cauterized, such as the loss of his eyes, they couldn't be recovered completely. All for One the quirk may very well be the strongest power in this series, but like all others, it does come with a few shortcomings. For starters, All for One doesn't receive a person proficiency along with their quirk. So quirks that are complicated or require great precision aren't of interest to him, which is why most of his many abilities are actually really simple. He more or less just creates compound moves to give the illusion of complexity. Next, because quirks throughout the ages have naturally grown in complexity, All for One's body can't really contain the quirks of recent generations. This is probably why we've never seen a hero in training have their quirks stolen. It's also the whole reason All for One sought out Dr. Garaki in the first place, and genuinely believed in his quirk doomsday theory. All for One is also haunted by the residual consciousnesses of the people whose quirks he's stolen. It's sort of like the vestige world of One for All, except instead of a support group, it's a collection of haters. Then, because of his permanent injuries, there's also a limit on how many quirks he can contain and use in succession. And finally, he doesn't even have the original version of the quirk anymore, just a duplicate. All for One has had more quirks than anyone in the series. Search, which he stole from the hero Ragdoll, allowed him to monitor up to 100 people at once, along with knowing their precise location and weak points. Because of his wounds, All for One is blind, but this quirk makes up for that. Warping allows him to create multiple dark sludge portals, which can transport dozens of people that he has a close relationship with at once to and from his position. Air Cannon lets him release shockwaves of air from his arms. Rivet Stab extends darkened tendrils from parts of his body that have the capability of stabbing targets. Forced Quirk Activation allows him to activate a person's quirk against their will. Impact Recoil is used to return the impact of a blow back to the original attacker. Spring-like Limbs lets him coil his muscles for the sake of enhancing his physical strength. Multiplier gives All for One more arms. Hypertrophy makes his arms bigger. Rivet creates growths on his arm. Spear-like Bones creates bone formations on his arm. Infrared also supplements his blindness by granting limited infrared senses. Life Force grants him a ridiculously long lifespan. Radio Waves lets him disrupt radio waves and communicators. Hard Flame Fan lets him create a wall of flames. All for One also has some unnamed quirks. A Glue Quirk, a Mind Control Quirk, a Vibration Detection Quirk, an Ooze Quirk, a Hardening Quirk, a Razor Blade Quirk, a Levitation Quirk, a Mouth Quirk, a Telekinesis Quirk, a Lie Detector Quirk, a Strength Enhancer Quirk, and a Kinetic Booster Quirk, along with formerly having almost every other additional quirk in the series besides One for All. During the Second War, All for One was able to successfully rewind his body to its original pre-All Might condition. However, eventually, he will be erased from existence thanks to the power of Rewind. Quirks aside, All for One is easily one of the most intelligent characters in the entire series, and is certainly its most accomplished tactician. It's to the point where, despite being weaker than our last 2 characters up ahead, there's still the chance he could defeat them thanks to his sheer brilliance. Number 2. Deku. Izuku Midoriya is the only person on this list who did not get any of his quirks from All for One. Instead, he owes his possession of 7 quirks to the stockpiler quirk One for All. Each of the quirks belongs to a past wielder of One for All and has been strengthened exponentially over time. Gear Shift from the second user lets Deku change the velocity of anything he touches, which lets him strike with more force or destabilize opponents. Bajin from the third user stores kinetic energy that Deku can later release to increase his speed and power. Danger Sense from the fourth user Hikage Shinomori lets him perceive threats around him before he can see them. Black Whip from the fifth user Daigoro Banjo allows Deku to manifest and control dark tendrils of energy from various parts of his body that aid in range grappling, mid-air maneuverability, can lift several tons of weight at once without strain, sprout from his back, act as additional limbs, reinforce his limbs, and even reinforce his body internally. All of which being proportionately supercharged by strong emotions such as anger. Smokescreen from the sixth user N lets Deku produce thick clouds of obscuring purple smoke capable of covering a massive area. And finally, Float from the seventh user Shimura Nana, which lets Deku levitate. Deku's proficiency with these additional quirks has only increased with time. But we can't forget about the core power of One For All, which granted him enhanced strength, speed, and raw power. A power which, by its lonesome, was used by All Might to establish decades of lasting peace in Japan and influence the entire world. Deku at this point is strong enough to dismantle entire villainous situations by himself, could defeat the entirety of Class 1A all at the same time if he wanted to, and is the only hope the heroes have against the villains during the Second War. Now, he may not be an all-for-one level intellect, but Deku is actually a rather intelligent character, especially when it comes to quirks and combat, aside from the fact that he forgot kicking was a possibility at least. His indomitable will also tends to defy his intelligence at times and lead him in certain directions beyond reason, for better or for worse. Regardless, he's been able to come up with plenty of impressive combinations of his quirks for several different situations on the fly. Deku is far from his prime, both physically and mentally. At the end of the day, he's a 15-year-old who has only had this incredible power for 10 months. Number 1. Shigaraki Tomura. The new symbol of fear, Shigaraki Tomura, is a calamity given form. Shigaraki's original quirk, Decay, is by far the most destructive in the series. With it, Shigaraki can destroy anything his hands touch as they crumble to dust from the point of contact. Decay can spread from one thing to another, and do so with such volatility that it can destroy an entire city and all its inhabitants in mere moments, even from a distance. All while being able to now avoid decaying whatever he wants. To prepare himself for the original all-for-one quirk, Shigaraki had his body modified by Dr. Garaki, becoming his greatest work. Even in his incomplete form, according to Endeavor, Shigaraki was already physically comparable to All Might in the past. He's super strong, durable, and fast. Even without his list of stolen quirks, Shigaraki is the most dangerous person in the world. He's simultaneously battled many of the strongest characters in the series, all while having his quirks suppressed by erasure. He is able to rapidly mutate and become a virtually endless fleshy abomination that not even the top heroes can handle. Now, because Shigaraki has the original all-for-one quirk, a vestige of its former user was gained as well. Despite mostly being a sort of mental parasite, this feature has provided Shigaraki with access to the peerless tactical know-how of his predecessor. From what we've seen, he doesn't have as many quirks as his master, but is no less dangerous. He's got super regeneration, search, air cannon, radio waves, rivet stab, heavy payload, scatter, which lets him split up projectiles, spring-like limbs, and wing, which allows him to sprout wings from his back and fly. He used to have a quirk named Reflect, which let him send attacks back towards their enemies, but lost it when he stole New Order from Star and Stripe, one of the strongest quirks in the series that he wasn't able to successfully keep. Even without all-for-one's intellect, Shigaraki is a genius in his own right. He's a brilliant strategist that since the very beginning was able to analyze combat strategies as if he were playing a video game. He has outsmarted and/or outmaneuvered every exceptional mind in the series. There isn't a single character in My Hero Academia that can unquestionably defeat him by their lonesome. Shigaraki already has the power to destroy the world, and even then, at only 21 years old, like Deku, he still has the potential for even more growth. Shigaraki is the strongest. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.